Everything is gone, nothing's mine. Let my resolve be this design. May you be first in all my thoughts, in all my words, in all my deeds. You are love's sweetest song to me. In your arms I long to be. And may I always try to lay my shadow self aside, so that you, the sun, will shine through. The love at one, you are love's sweetest song to me. In your arms I long to be. A child's sweetest memory. In your arms I long to be.
Okay, thank you, Baba, for Elizabeth Patterson and for the incredible opportunity to spend time around her and be mentored by Elizabeth and be her friend. And here's a song that she loved that I would sing sometimes working around Dilruba, because I had taken her to church and a new woman minister had whipped out a guitar and sung this song in a sermon. Elizabeth, seeing that I was trying not to sing along, when the chorus said, "Why don't you sing along?" and the whole church was very quiet. And so on the way home, I sang Elizabeth the song, and she said, "Oh, that's such a beautiful song." And then she would ask me to sing it as I was making lunch or doing this or that around the house. So this is a song I always think of with Elizabeth. Open mine eyes that I might see. Open mine eyes that I might see. Visions of truth thou hast for me. Open mine eyes, illumine me, Spirit divine. Love of my life, I am sighing, I am not crying, I am dancing along in the madness. There is no sadness, only the song of the soul. Let's sing What do you do for a living? Are you forgiving, giving shelter? Follow your heart, love will find you, the truth will unbind you. Sing out the song of the soul, let's sing this song. Why don't you sing along? And we can sing for a long, long time. Why don't you sing this song? Why don't you sing along? And we can sing for a long, long time. Come to your life like a warrior, nothing will bore you. You can be happy. Let in the light, it will heal you, and you can feel you and sing out the song of the soul. Let's sing this song. Why don't you sing along? And we can sing for a long, long time. Why don't you sing this song? Why don't you sing along? And we can sing for a long, long time. And we can sing for a long, long time.
Wow. Beautiful, Kathy.
Mhm,
Thank you.
mhm.
Let's see. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your Dilruba experiences.
No. So many wonderful stories. I think yesterday when I was in a very unpoised moment, which for some reason was happening, particularly yesterday, I really did think of my spiritual poise story that has resonated and helps me get through unpoised times. Okay, so what I was, helping around the house. I was cooking lunch. I was doing this for Elizabeth, doing that for Kitty. The phone was ringing off the hook. It was just mad house day. And in the middle of all that, Kitty asked me to go make the guest beds in the guest bedroom off to the left, off the living room. And, I was making these beds, and in a big rush, I short sheeted the bed and I put on the coverlet without putting on the top sheet. And I think I really was kind of muttering not very nice words under my breath as Elizabeth walked in and sat on the other bed. And I tried composing myself, and she said in that sweet, lovely voice, she said, "Yes, that is what the spiritual life is all about. Seeking poise in the midst of intense activity."
Wow.
And that's really helped me get through. Uh, she was a real stickler for words. And once when I was driving her through the center from the, what do you call, where the cove and that little area toward Baba's house, and there was a low-lying tree with beautiful branches and Spanish moss hanging over the road on the way to where Laurel Oaks is now. I just started saying, "Wow, wow, wow." And she says very gently, "Couldn't you think of a different word?" And so, sometimes I would get upset, but this time I just decided, let's go with it. So I said, And we just got joking about the words I could say to give a positive expletive. I don't know if there is such a thing. Anyway, so I said, "Aha, Marvelous. Isn't that wonderful? And I mentioned that to Lois, and she said that Elizabeth did the same with her, and I'm sure maybe with Dana and others too. You know, you use the same word, and she's wanting you to sort of step up your act a little bit and get classier. So, and anyway, there's millions of other stories. So those are two.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Kath.
Yeah.
I I did find her bio. So um uh, uh I'll start. I'll just I'll go over it. And then Jim, I'd like you to be next after that. Okay. Um she was this is Tony Zois, and what a resource. She was born of Blue Book parents. This is actually Phyllis in The Awakener in Chicago, Illinois. She they moved to New York City when she was 5 years old, and Charles asked her if she had ever had pets, and she said no. They lived in apartments, and her father wouldn't they didn't want pets in the apartments. So she said when she got to India that Baba gave her animals, and she had animals basically ever since. Um, so she debuted in 1917, and then she had a 30-year career selling as an insurance broker, which was really unusual for that time. Um, and he said, well, here I'll read it. He said, at the when the on the morning, well, when they were setting out to drive on the in 1952 to before the accident, she said, I saw Baba on the path behind it, and oh, who was I? Behind the center in Myrtle Beach, and Baba gestured that I should call Elizabeth. And when Elizabeth came to the door of her cabin, Baba asked on his board, "Where are your insurance papers?" And she said, "In the cellar at Yukon Dunes." And he told her to go get them. She had 5 policies, which helped to pay the bills, the enormous bills of the accident. Um, and then she married Kenneth Patterson in 1929. Uh, and let's see, I believe this is Phyllis again. Uh, she said the marriage was an amicable one, but when she met Elizabeth in 1943, Elizabeth was living with Norina and Nadine in New York. So let's see, Elizabeth and Norina were an extraordinary pair, so opposite in temperament. Norina was fiery, volatile, talkative. Elizabeth was quiet and immensely calm. Baba used to imitate them. Uh, he says, Norina goes too fast, Elizabeth goes too slow. I've rarely seen Elizabeth get overwrought. Perhaps about animal pets, of which she was so fond. Baba once told Elizabeth and Norina that they had been together since the creation. Um, and he said, I used to think this was one of Baba's peculiar avataric sense of humor, but but it is comprehensible if both are members of his circle. And he named Elizabeth Dilruba, meaning stealer of hearts. Now, Elizabeth also was an ambulance driver in World War I. She had quite a story. She in France during World War I, and she had driven Baba. Oh, she had driven Baba and the girls thousands of miles over the rough roads of India in her Buick during the Blue Bus tours, and also in the U.S. And Baba once said, when he allows someone to drive him, it ensures they will not get lost while traversing the path through the spiritual planes. Thus, she was a modern feminine Arjuna for her dear Krishna Baba. She loved traveling and was one of 5 foreigners taking on an Arctic expedition on a Soviet icebreaker going within 400 miles of the North Pole. In July 1931, uh, uh, the same year in which she met Baba at Harmon, uh, through her friendship with the turning, through her friendship with the Schlosses, she said about meeting Baba, "When I first saw him, it was just as though I had always known him. He was like an old friend. It was instant recognition. His silence didn't seem strange or awkward. She had dreamed of him 3 times when she was only 12 years old." So briefly, that's Elizabeth before Baba. Well, and after too, with the accident. Oh, another interesting thing was he gave her permission to stay in the Panchgani cave uh, in Tiger Valley. He Baba himself had the cave dug in 1929 and stayed there in seclusion. He allowed only 2 other disciples, Bairamji and Pleader, to stay there. On May 8th, 1939, Elizabeth was to stay in the cave exactly 12 hours. Baba himself locked her in, telling her not to fall asleep. She had a paranormal experience that night, and when she asked Baba if it was symbolic, he said yes, and she would understand its full meaning later. Another interesting experience she and Narina shared occurred on their trip west in 1932. Baba wanted them to accompany him on the train. They wanted to drive across the U.S. Somewhere in the western desert, they lost their way. Suddenly, a man in a car ahead of them beckoned to them to follow him. They did, but when they stopped to thank him, his car had disappeared. They discovered a bridge had washed out on the original road, and if they had followed it, they might have been killed. In Hollywood, Baba said to save them, he had sent one of his Abduls, or agents. So, I wonder, Jim, if at this time you would pitch in a song or a memory or both. Is that too quick?
I actually somehow I thought about Evelina Graham, who worked for years and years for Miss Patterson and for Miss Kitty. And Evelina was such a devoted part of the Dilruba scene. And one day after Elizabeth passed, she said, I had the most amazing dream. A young Elizabeth, the likes of whom I had never seen, I didn't know her when she was young, was running joyfully toward a man in a long white robe and running into his arms in a garden. And of course, I said, "Oh, Evelina, that was Baba." And she was so happy that she had shared that dream. So
Had
I,
she met Baba? Had she met? Did,
yeah, she said, I served the Baba. Yes. Her husband's mom, Betsy, was it Betsy Graham? Yeah. Served Betty, was it Betty, Dana? Uh,
Not Bessie.
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 Thank you. Bessie served Baba and in 52 and I think 56, and so did Evelina. So she said, yes, I served the Baba. That's what she called Mayor Baba. So this song came to me as a song I'd like to share about Elizabeth. And it's an old time spiritual I learned in Maysville, about 2 hours west of here. Sit down, servant, sit down. Sit down, servant, sit down. Sit down, servant, sit down. Sit down and rest a little while. You've come from a long way, sit down. You've come from a long way, sit down. You've come from a long way, sit down. Sit down and rest a little while. Tell me, who are you looking for? Sit down. Who are you looking for? Sit down. Who are you looking for? Sit down and rest a little while. I'm looking for my Baba. Sit down. My father and my mother, sit down. My sister and my brother, sit down. Sit down and rest a little while. So sit down, servant, sit down. Sit down, servant, sit down. Sit down, servant, sit down. Sit down and rest a little while.
I think you had a whole book full of stories.
Mm. Jimmy the Turtle was a big focus at the house. The first duty was to take him out of his little Pyrex rectangular, cooking dish off of his little rock in the middle of the dish and change the now cool water into sort of a tepid water that Elizabeth would very carefully show me just the temperature that Jimmy would like to sit on in his little pond there. And then very carefully we would place Jimmy on his rock in the nice warm water, but not too hot, of course, right at the exhaust part of the bottom of the refrigerator where some hot air would blow out on his cold reptilian body. And another wonderful, instruction from Elizabeth was feeding Jimmy ice cream, which was also a very important part of the day in the summer. There are so many wonderful stories. She had a great sense of humor, and once when I brought her afternoon coffee and almost spilled a little bit from the tray that I put on the bed, she sweetly said to me, "Now, I want to let you know I would love to have cafe au lait. I don't want cafe au lit." For those of you who know French, cafe au lait, coffee with milk, cafe au lit, coffee on the bed. So I said, "Elizabeth, I didn't know, I knew you had a good sense of humor. I didn't know you could pun in French, or you could joke in French as well." "Yes," she says, twinkling, "there are many things about me you don't know." So she had a wonderful sense of humor.
I heard, yeah, Charles said she was great at punning.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Our let's see. I have a little bit. Am I audible? Low audible? Is my volume not great?
No, it's
Oh,
good.
is it fine? Oh, okay. I just got I looked at a message in here. Okay, thank you. Um, let's see. I thought I would read just a little bit from her book, the day becomes the answer. Um, this is Charles, I think, talking. Uh, Elizabeth had a deep and abiding love of animals that infused her daily life. She treated each animal companion, hers and ours, with extraordinary care and concern. Curious about how she came to love animals, I asked one day if she had had pets as a child. "Oh, no," she replied. "I always wanted animals, but father wouldn't allow it in the places where we lived." She paused for a moment, smiled, and added, "But when I went to India to live with Baba, he put me in charge of caring for the animals. So you see, Baba gave me my animals." From her time in India till the end of her life, animal companions were near and dear to Elizabeth. Although she rarely explained her love of animals, one day, toward the end of her life, she offered an insight into her relationships with them. She was visiting with her nephew Harry. I happened to be there. After a few pleasantries, Harry broached a delicate and uncomfortable subject. "Aunt Boo," he began, "I think it is time that you gave up animals, especially those cats, 6 or 7 at the time. After all, a lot of the work falls to Kitty, who has no business doing that at her age." Elizabeth sat still for what felt like a very long moment. Finally, in a quiet voice, she replied, "First, let me say that I help feed the cats. It doesn't all fall to Kitty." Then Elizabeth leaned forward in her chair, looked directly at Harry, and said with deep feeling, "My animals have helped to make me who I am, and I have helped to make them who they are. So you see, I could not possibly give them up." Nothing more was ever said on the subject. Oh, there's a sweet story too about, there are so many sweet stories about animals. I remember Jane told me about Beauty, who was a dog that was uh, kind of left tied up to a tree on the road, and had pretty clearly been abused. And she took Beauty in. Beauty was a boy actually, and no, and Elizabeth would keep him right by her with a chain, because he guarded her ferociously, Elizabeth, and would growl, and he be really aggressive with everybody else. So I remember Jim telling me about this dog. Um, and Elizabeth said that at night, Elizabeth would have to take Beauty out to go to the bathroom, and Jane would say, "I'll go, Elizabeth. I'll take him." And she'd say, "Let Elizabeth." Say, "No, no, never mind." She said, "Never mind," and she would always take Beauty out. So that was Beauty. And then there's this little story about another one, Champy. Um, Champy was a dog who had been hit by a car, and so she took him to the vet. I'll read this. Who did all that she could. Unfortunately, the internal injuries were so severe that treatment could only make the dog comfortable. Elizabeth was told that the dog was in no real pain but would not survive long. Elizabeth did not wish to put a dog down unless it was absolutely necessary, so she took the dog home to Dilruba and named her Champy because of her champagne coloring. Champy, I guess. The next day, I came over to help with Champy's care. When I entered the front door, I heard Elizabeth speaking quietly to someone on the porch. Surprised that she had a visitor, I peeked into the porch to see who it was and to determine if I should leave and come back later. This is Charles speaking. Elizabeth was sitting alone with Champy, cuddled in her lap. Champy seemed quite content as she looked up at Elizabeth's face. I stood in the next room listening as Elizabeth spoke to Champy, saying over and over again, "Don't worry or be afraid. Everything will be all right. You belong to Baba and he will always take care of you. Baba loves you very much." So the next and so passed Champy passed away the next day peacefully in Elizabeth's arms. So there are just many stories, sweet stories. There was Foundy, who was uh, they noticed he was waiting by a railroad track. This is in India. Waiting. Somebody had left him and gotten on a train and gone, and so there was Foundy sitting on the track, waiting for his master. I'm so Elizabeth asked if she could keep him and Baba, and that was Foundy. And there's a story here. He when Foundy uh, as he got older, when he got Elizabeth, Baba found Elizabeth crying one time. He said, what's wrong?" And she said, "Foundy's dying." And Baba told her, "Foundy will live longer than Gandhi." And I think Gandhi was shot that night, very soon after. And Foundy died a couple of days later. So that's that story. Ah, boy, I guess we've lost Jim. I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm sure he's sorry too. Um, you know, at this point, I just might open it up to stories. If anybody has stories of Elizabeth, it would be great to hear them. um, and the way you indicate that you have a story, Rosalie's raised a hand. I'll put directions for raising your hand in the chat. Okay, Rosalie, go ahead.
Uh, I've had certainly personal stories. I'm not going to share those, but I was given this book for my birthday, and it's absolutely exquisite, and it has all about, through Elizabeth's words, meeting Baba, coming to the house, and I wanted to read a little of that. We'll see. It's so beautiful. She says, well, Meredith Starr had told her that Baba was a Sadhguru, and she didn't know what that was at all. Anyway, she said, Elizabeth says, I felt not at all prepared at that moment, but rose to follow him upstairs. She had been beckoned. Meredith says, Baba wants to see you. I had formulated no questions to ask Baba and walked slowly up the steps, trying rapidly to think of something vital to inquire. The problems in my own life seemed impossible of solution in some way or other through my own efforts. So I tried to formulate more purely spiritual questions, but I reached the door with nothing ready. Then I thought I would let the master do the talking, but remembered that he was maintaining silence, which he has kept for spiritual reasons for 7 years. Still, in the vacuum of trying to think, I crossed the threshold. I had taken several steps into the room before my eyes rested on Baba. Elizabeth recognized Meher Baba immediately. And this is her words, all the way to the far end of the room where he was seated. I tried to recall where I had seen him before. The feeling was one of familiarity, like meeting a friend in a foreign land, a friend whom one has known well, as at school. Only since that earlier period, the appearance has changed. Still, in the process of recalling, I love this because it's like in Elizabeth's words. Still, in the process of recalling, I arrived where Baba was seated with sandaled feet folded in front of him and the sun shining on his beautiful hair. His remarkable eyes reminded me of a Persian print, but they were so alive with 1,000 dancing fires in them that I realized I had never seen anyone like Baba before. Nowhere in my world travels had I seen his likeness, nor did he seem to fit into any nationality. Upon this close observance, my recognition ceased. But as he smilingly motioned me to be seated by him on the orange-colored divan, I still felt completely at ease and at home with him. I was unconscious of any personality dividing us, either of his or of mine. Now I can only liken it to being seated by a quiet pool at the foot of a great mountain with only the sense of peace in nature newly born. This feeling never left her, even when Meredith read aloud while Meher Baba's fingers flew over the letters of the alphabet board, saying he was pleased to see her. Anyway, I just think this is just exquisitely Elizabeth. She's so taken off, because she had that incredible ability to plan and foresee. And here she's meeting God, and it's so beautiful. It threw her off, but she had the poise. She just took her steps. She went up the steps. I love it. I love that. And actually, in my times with Elizabeth, and I would always see her when I came to the center since 1971. I never saw her as an authority figure. I never saw her as an authority figure, and she was an authority figure. Without, and I love that. And she was very free to give personal advice to me, So I knew she didn't see everybody. She didn't have talks with everybody, but since she was going to mentor someone that I had involvement with, she would talk to me every time I came to the center after that. And she actually, I would say she strongly encouraged me to go back to California, which I'm very grateful, because I like democracy. I like democracy, and that's all I could say. She knew, and I was around Phyllis Frederick, who was into democracy, and amen. So I'm grateful to Elizabeth. She saw, and she also saw wisely, I think, that I was not matched to the person I was going with. So, it was like, save me a divorce, who knows? Anyway, I have to say this funny thing she said to me that it made me laugh for 30 years. I'd always have a talk, and she says, well, now, Rosalie, what are you thinking of doing now? And I'd said at this time, I want to be a comedian, Elizabeth. And she says, well, now, Rosalie, that's possible. But this is so funny. But now, Rosalie, you're going to have to learn to listen, because everything you could say, you already know. And I thought, it's actually great for a performer, because you have to listen to the audience, and you have to listen to the deepest in yourself. You have to share the highest contact with God you have, and not be carried away by the audience, So it was like most wonderful advice. It was, and I tell you, I'd laugh every time I thought of it, and I thought, that's so wonderful. She was so practical. She was like beautifully practical. But I'll say one funny thing because I met, the first time I came in 1971, I met Frank Eaton. He was just about to retire. He was a caretaker for quite a while. And he did tell me at one point, he says, the only person that could make Elizabeth cry was Norina. And I just thought that was, it's interesting. I love hearing things like that. It's very human, very human. Anyway, I am grateful for my contact with her, and I'm grateful for the direction she sent me away.
Thanks, Rosalie.
But anyway, it's absolutely exquisite. This book and the account in her words of meeting Baba, it is just,
wow. Yeah.
It's absolutely, I thought, this is a very expensive book, but I wanted it, and Baba gave it to me for my birthday. So, but it's so beautiful. And it's, as far as words, I loved, she was so, she had a magic with words. And I loved that she would pun like that, you know, because in a way, even what she told me, you're going to have to learn to listen because everything you could say, you already know. I mean, what beauty, what beauty. You know what, she had a incredible uniqueness of expressing what she had to say, you know. And I didn't know it's like it, you know, but you know, Elizabeth was Elizabeth, you know. um I would
Thanks,
say
Rosalie.
I
Let me
just want to say one last thing.
start.
This one time she said something that I didn't like, and we were sitting there and she looked so powerful. She just looked so contained and poised, and I was feeling zero poised. And she said something I didn't like, and in my mind I was so mad. I was thinking, you think you're so smart, you can't even put rouge on correctly, because she had that like war paint, you know. Anyway, it's interesting. You have contact with whoever, these people that are in his circle, but and no telling, you know, everything's off when you have that contact, however brief, you know. Anyway, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. That was great memories, Rosalie. Lots of them. Wow. Diana.
Jai Baba to you all. Thank you, Rosalie. It was so beautiful to hear those words of Elizabeth about meeting Baba. I'll have to find that book.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't find anyone who had less time with Elizabeth than me, because I met her only once, very briefly, when I was meeting Kitty. I think this was my first visit at the center, and Elizabeth walked in. Kitty introduced us. We probably said Jai Baba or hello, and that was it. But I had 3 virtual meetings with her, you could say, and I just wanted to mention them. First, my very first night in Myrtle Beach ever, there was an English group there, and they had brought a film. They were from the film group there, and they had made a film. Those were the days of film, of Elizabeth, several films, but this one was of Elizabeth telling the story of the center, and it was the rough cut. And so there are these little odd places where I think she said shoe dog, or I don't know. It was uncharacteristic of her, but it was really lovely to, as Rosalie said in her words, hear Elizabeth's story of the founding of the center. And so that must exist out there someplace, and I hope a lot of you have seen that. It's very special. The other virtual meeting was on paper, and I like to read, and on this one occasion, I was spending a lot of time in Saroja Library, and at that time, there were these thick binders with different things in them. And this one binder had this extensive correspondence, obviously not all of it, but extensive correspondence between Elizabeth and Baba about the forming of the center. And I took time to read these letters. And in this one letter, and I can't say because I don't remember the exact words, but there was some place where they were working out the details of the center. And she said something along the lines of, "It would be my heart's joy to offer the center to you." And I just got this real sense, this huge wave of love that Elizabeth had for Baba in her strongly heartfelt love of him, and of course, desire to give him the center as an expression of her love. It was very beautiful, and those letters are wonderful to read, and I don't know where they are, but hopefully everybody can have a chance to look at them at some time. And the last thing I just want to mention, and this virtual connection was through my car. On some later trip, I had car trouble, and I was directed to Smith Service Center. That's Billy Smith, who a lot of people in Myrtle Beach went to with their car troubles. And it was really interesting. I called and I think he answered the phone. And as soon as I said, I'm staying on Mayor Spiritual Center, I think he knew he was going to take care of the car. And when I went in and I talked with him, he told me that he used to take care of Miss Patterson's car. And so, you know, I got that sense, that experience of people in Myrtle Beach knowing Elizabeth, having some business with her, and her standing in the community. And it was just a very lovely connection. And of course, he also told me that he had been in the divine presence when he was a young boy serving at Summit Function, and Baba came into that space and he was serving food, not directly to Baba, but he saw Baba across the room. So those were the three things I wanted to share. Thank you. Jai Baba.
Thank you. Let's see. We have, Susan, I see your hand and you're in line. Let's see. Dana's next. I'll get to you, Susan.
Well, I just wanted to say Baba, of course, said about Elizabeth that she was unique. And he also said in a cable, I think, that no one except he, knew the sacrifice that she'd made for him. And I think, yeah, we can't know what that was. I'm trying to, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you fine. Yeah.
Just another example of, I remember a funny thing at the table about dogs and animals. Elizabeth and Jane would eat together often, of course, and Jane's dog Bo would be there at the table. And Elizabeth would wait for Jane to be very engaged in conversation. She'd look down at the other end of the table, wait for Jane to be totally engaged in conversation, and slip Bo some chicken under the table. I happened to be sitting near Elizabeth. I could see this was going on under the table quite often. And Elizabeth would be looking at Jane with rapt attention at whatever Jane was saying. But meantime, there was this little subtext going on at the other end of the table. Another thing about, I don't have a lot of animal stories, but there's one story that I witnessed, which was Elizabeth's last night at Dilruba. I happened to be spending the night in the room with Elizabeth that night. She sent me out for the cat 5 times. And I was actually rather irritated, I have to say, by the 5th time. The cat actually never did come in. I never did find the cat, but that was Elizabeth's last night at the house. She must have had some intuitive thing about it, and the cat did too, I guess. Because when we woke up in the morning, Elizabeth had a serious stroke, and she was, ambulanced to the hospital that morning. But another thing about Elizabeth's precision with words, with language, there was a very unusual thing that Elizabeth called us all into the barn when America was coming out of Vietnam, when we were withdrawing all the troops from Vietnam. Elizabeth had the whole community gather in the barn. It's one of the only times I ever remember gathering in the barn that was not, Silence Day Eve or Baba's birthday or some special thing to do with Baba's biography. She said she felt it was important for us to all be together and to concentrate on peace. And we kept silence. I don't remember, we must have said the prayers. I don't remember everything that happened, but I do remember that at the end of the whole event, Elizabeth stood up from her chair. She was getting ready to leave. And you could almost see this little light bulb go on above her head. She turned around and she said, "Peace is contagious." And then she started to go out, and then she turned around again and she said, "War is infectious."
Oh my gosh.
And then she left. She was so precise in her, she was a poet, as many of you know. She was a published poet. And whenever I think of Elizabeth, certain words come to my mind, and one main one is respect. The respect that she didn't demand it, but her presence commanded it. I think we all had immense respect for her, and she had respect for all beings and all people. And I think she had an incredible ability I said this to Kitty once and she said, oh yes, that's very good. You should write it down. Of course I didn't. But what I said was, Elizabeth had the capacity to bring oneself esteem by the esteem she gave you. She conveyed your own self-esteem to you. I didn't say it quite right, but you get the gist of it. She just had deep respect for all human beings because she respected that inner self. And what else I think of her is clarity, that comes with the language, thoroughness, and discretion, an incredible sense of discretion. A little minor example of that is one time, you've all heard this thing about Baba's influence extending for 17 miles past the center. You've heard that kind of rumor or mythology or whatever. And for some reason, I decided to ask Elizabeth about that once. I said, but did Baba ever really say that? She said, well, I'll just say that if he did, I didn't hear it. So she didn't say it wasn't true, but she discreetly said, she wasn't confirming it, that's for sure. And another, I guess you could say this is part of her discretion or part of her respect for everybody who came to the center. She said, just remember, everybody who comes through these gates has already come a very long way. I'll tell a couple of stories if I have time. I don't want to run on too long, but a couple of stories about the center and Elizabeth. She was, I don't know how to put it, hot wired into the center. She had a sixth sense about the center and particularly about the guest house, but I think really everything in the center. But one time, and everybody I think I've ever showed around the center, and we've all showed people around the center, but there was one person that I showed around the center. It's the only time that I remember somebody sort of not getting it. And one of the things he didn't get was Elizabeth. He met Elizabeth and he made a comment like something like, oh, she's a nice little old lady. And I thought, this guy's he's not connecting. And that particular night, Elizabeth, I think, had met him inside the center. She came into the center to sort of check on that fellow, and he had left. He never spent the night. He had a booking on the center, and he never spent the night. So she had picked up on something not quite right there also. One time, Barbara Katzenberg and I were staying in the guest house, and for some reason, we were sort of cribbing about a couple of things in the kitchen. It wasn't very light. We were complaining about it being a little dark and complaining about the fact that we couldn't find a pot lid that fit on a pot. And the next day, Elizabeth had invited us to tea. First words out of her mouth was, well, how are you finding things in the guest house? How is the light? And sometimes people have trouble finding the pot lids that fit. And Barbara and I just looked at each other and said, oh no, everything's just fine. We were just astonished. Just in case you didn't know how connected she was to your stay on the center. Just incredibly connected. Well, there's so many stories, but there are lots of people who have many stories. So, but I'll just say, I'll leave you with just two things. One thing she said was, with Baba, all comes to be, but not exactly in our time. In other words, everything he said would come to be, but not exactly in the time we expect it. And at the end of her life, she was sitting in that room, which is now the office where Barbara Plu's office is. She was sitting in the chair in the corner of that room and she was looking out on the lake and she said, I've shown this view, I've shown this lake to so many people. And I've never really had the opportunity to enjoy it myself, to really look at it myself. And now I have the time to do that. And I was amazed that she was so focused on serving. She really had never been able to enjoy it for herself. Anyway, she did then. So Jai Baba, Jai Baba. Oops.
Sorry, Susan. I was going to say at this point, I'll get you in here. Well, Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. And then Jeff.
Those were wonderful stories, Dana, and also Rosalie. Thank you. I just have a couple stories. I want to say that I loved Elizabeth. I adored her, and she's part of why I'm still here. And I have a couple stories about her being a big, scary authoritarian figure. So people who know me won't be surprised that in the early 1970s, I got into a political argument with someone in the refectory, a man, about the Vietnam War. And the war was still going on at the time, and he was not just in favor of the war, he was putting down protesters, and of which people who were against the war, which was me and my friends. So anyway, I felt like I was defending us. In any case, we got into a political argument and the next day when I came into the refectory, another woman up there was crying, and she was a young woman who looked somewhat like me. She was Jewish with curly hair, about my age. And she said that Elizabeth had called her and accused her of having a political argument with someone, and she would never ever do such a thing. So I realized I had to call Elizabeth and tell her that it was me. So I did, and Elizabeth said, well, we have to talk. So I took the long trek to Elizabeth's house with fear and dreading. And when I got there, Elizabeth hugged me, gave me tea and cookies, told me Baba's stories, told me how much Baba loved, told me that she basically agreed with me, but I needed to be more discreet, and sent me on my way. And then another time, when I was going to the center quite often in the late 70s and 80s. This was in the late 70s. And a lot of times when I would be on the center, it would be like a theme of a lot of other people on the center who had something in common with me. One time there were like a whole bunch of writers or Jewish people, other things like that. And so when I was on the center, I was also a feminist. There was a whole bunch of women who were very, very strident feminists. So we all got together talking, and of course we came up with a list of things that we didn't like. And we decided that we were going to go and present this to Elizabeth. And it included things like, at that time we wanted more women caretakers. Darwin and Jean had just been at the center and only Darwin talked. And I don't remember what our other issues were, but we went and we presented these to Elizabeth. And once again, she sat us all down in the living room, gave us tea and cookies or cake. And she told us that Jean was very shy. She said it was a good idea to have more female caretakers. She also told us that she herself was a feminist, that she'd always felt oppressed as a woman. She talked to us about driving the ambulance in the war, and told us stories and hugged us and sent us on our way. So, basically, my feeling about Elizabeth is that she respected people having opinions. She respected people speaking up and saying what they think. She was not a flatterer. She didn't try to please other people superficially. Like Dana, she respected the deepest part of people. And she was just wonderful. Thank you for listening. Jai Baba.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. That was great, heartfelt. Jeff, I realize you have to get off to work.
Okay. Yeah, wonderful, Susan. That was great to hear. And Dana, all I like these stories that capture Elizabeth. A couple of things. I thought the first time Kitty and Elizabeth invited me over there for dinner, and these two elegant ladies, and everything was set up quite nicely and everything. But I kind of looked off to my left there, and there was like actually a turtle on the table, eating ice cream. And I guess they were so used to it that it didn't that didn't there was nothing strange about it, but it was really quite weird, you know. But I mean, and the contrast of these two ladies, just elegant and focused on other things, while this extraordinary thing was happening right there next to my plate. But anyway, one thing about Elizabeth, that I always felt, she was her mind was very still and her heart was very quiet. And so she could look out and see very clearly. And I always felt like, and both she and Kitty could look a little farther into me than I felt comfortable with. I felt this must be the way, it made you a little self-conscious. I mean, a lot of people, you can have some thoughts going on or emotions and they wouldn't really see them. But you knew that they were saying what was going on in you, and you had to kind of get used to that. But anyway, someone described someone described Elizabeth's relationship to the center is like one of these cutout doll houses where you can see in every room, and know what's going on, all the way from the utility room to the upper bedrooms and everything. She was, and I'll give you a couple of stories that illustrate this. One night when I was doing the overnight, I got a call in the morning, and I'm having my breakfast, and Elizabeth says she wants me to go down to the beach. Now, this is, she rarely would call me. And I said, well, Elizabeth, I'm eating breakfast now. Should I finish my breakfast and go down, or should I go down right away? She pauses on the phone and she says, no, finish your breakfast and then go down. So I finished my breakfast, got in the truck, and I'm heading down past the barn. And as I come down toward the beach parking lot, there are 13 people, that have intruded onto the center. I'm thinking, how the heck did she know? She even gave me time to finish my breakfast, and knowing that they were going to be coming in at that time. And of course, I told them, I was kind of polite, and I told them that they'd have to come in through the front, and they could have a tour and all that. But then there's another story where one of the night watchmen got a call about 3 in the morning, and Elizabeth says, I want you to go down, I think down by the beach. And this is not any of the paths. She says, I want you to go into the woods in a particular direction, so many feet back in the woods. And so the night watchman goes in there with a flashlight, going through an area that's not even a path, goes way back in there to where he thinks she has directed him. And right there's a person on the ground, terrified, because they had gotten totally lost and they had just stayed there, and didn't want to venture any further in the thick woods there. So she had it was like, I used to think it was kind of like a spider web, and if some little bug or a mosquito hits the outer the web, the spider knows it automatically and just can go and take care of it. And there are many stories I could tell, but one time when Adi was here, and he was here for 6 weeks, and we got so exhausted. People were cramming in here, over and over again, and it was a turnover. And toward the end of it, I was dead. I was really wiped out. But Kitty says that someone, right there in the office, someone called Elizabeth. She put her hand on over the phone, and said in a very eloquent way, Kitty, whom should I say is speaking? She didn't even know who she was. But instead of saying, who am I, she says, Kitty, whom should I say is speaking? But that's the way. It was so exhausting that you, I don't know. They said, I mean, I remember Elizabeth saying that Audie being there was just, it was like when Baba was there. The intensity and just the volume of work was incredible. And if I think of any other stories, I'll let you know. I mean, oh yeah, just a second. We have maybe we could do a song too.
I obviously didn't meet Elizabeth, but I used to hang around with Naju Coatwall, and she would describe her times in 1960 when she was in graduate school in Chapel Hill, and she'd come down most weekends. And there's certain, I don't know if, I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about, the little staircases that go into the cabins. She would go around with Elizabeth, and she said Elizabeth had such an artistic and precise eye that she would choose as the stairs were being built, like which roots to keep, try to keep as many roots and as much natural as possible. But they weren't random. They shouldn't just say, oh, just stick those stairs there. She would think about how they should go to be most beautiful and also function the most. But that's a side of her I don't hear much about. But according to Naju, she had a very fine artistic sense. So whenever there's certain, especially the near cabin and the far cabin, when I look down at the stairs, I always think of Elizabeth because of those stories. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, we'll do one song here. This song is about the center. But wow, I guess Kathy wanted me to relate a song. I'll do it real quickly. There was a period when I got so exhausted on the center, and I began having a weird sensation on the side of my head that went on for some months, and I had no idea what it was, and I wasn't one to go to doctors or anything. But it was a very, very palpable sensation. I had no idea, but but anyway, so one time when I went in to see Elizabeth, and I'm talking with her, and then Elizabeth says, I see something right there on the side of your head. What you need to do is go home immediately and get complete rest, and don't come back until you're completely rested. And no one saw that, not even Kitty saw that, but Elizabeth saw this intangible thing that was going on. And I did. I mean, boy, was I needy. Okay. The guitar is about to arrive. This song starts out in the lagoon cabin, and it moves around to various places on the center, and I think you'll be able to tell. Okay. Ready or not, here we come. Tell us if you can hear the guitar. Move it here.
The computer.
Some sweet fragrance fills your cabin, welcomes me as I come in. When I'm quiet, I hear the fullness in the room where you have been. Like the scent of secret flowers, there's a beauty I receive. I can sit with you for hours, closer than the air I breathe.
I can see where you were walking, photographs I know so well mark the scenes of favorite stories that my heart still longs to tell. In the the pictures you are smiling on the path beside the pond.
As I follow in your footsteps, touched by something far beyond. I reach out to hold the railing, rest my hand and start to grin. Now I stand where you were standing, touching where your hands have been. On this bridge you meet me closer, crossing over time and space. These are tears of grateful wonder flowing down my smiling face. Now I find I'm often smiling just to turn and feel you here. I can sense your sacred timing. Everywhere I go, you're near. I can trace your human history, touch the cushion on your chair. You left so much grace and mystery. I can feel you everywhere. You left so much grace and mystery. I can feel you everywhere.
Okay, 1 second. Yeah. Jai Baba. Yeah, I would like to pay my respect and tribute and salutation to Elizabeth every time we remember her. And I especially always feel indebted and to her. She invited me to the center in 1978 and sponsored me writing direct letters to the US consul on the recommendation of Adi Keirani and having me as a guest on the center, inviting me for beautiful sessions of a lunch with her in the backyard of her house and taking me to the movie. I cannot forget those very special sojourn in my life, and I still feel very proud about it. And really, that keeps me connected with the center and reminds me of uh, beloved's Meher Baba's blessings every time. I feel my life so beautiful. And once I asked Elizabeth if she used to go church every Sunday, if I can come along with her. And she said, no, no, you stay on the center. And in 1980, I remember she passed away in 1980. And I was on the center in September, leaving the center on my way to California. And she by road. And she was there to give me farewell. And still I remember her waving hand. I cannot forget. And then I left for California to visit Walnut Creek Center. And so I feel so fortunate to have met her during her last days. Yeah, I like to sing a song. It's a Indian classical song. My heart is restless for God. Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om. मन तड़पत हरि दर्शन को आज मन तड़पत हरि दर्शन को आज मोरे तुम बिन बिगरे सगरे काज बिनती करत हूँ रखियो लाजे मन तड़पत हरि दर्शन को आज तुम्हारे द्वार का हूँ मैं जोगी तुम्हारे द्वार का हूँ मैं जोगी हमरी ओर नजर कब होगी हमारी ओर नजर कब होगी सुन मोरे व्याकुल मन काबा तड़पत हरि दर्शन को आज मोरे तुम बिन बिगरे सगरे काज बिनती करत हूँ रखियो लाजे मन तड़पत हरि दर्शन को आजे बिना गुरु ज्ञान न कहाँ से पाऊं बिना गुरु ज्ञान कहाँ से पाऊं दीजो दान हरि गुण गाऊं दीजो ज्ञान हरि गुण गाऊं सब गुनी जन में तुम रावा तड़पत हरिधर शन को आजे मन तड़पत हरिधर शन को अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय. Thank you.
That was beautiful, VJ. Thank you. That was a beautiful tribute to
Thank
Elizabeth.
you.
Wonderful
Jai
to
Jai.
hear your story about times with her.
Yeah.
We have Judy with a hand up.
Jai Baba, everyone. I've felt this morning Baba nudging me to share what for me is one of the most precious experiences in my life with Baba, since he revealed himself to me on the 31st of January in '69. And I still was hesitant and asked Baba, do you really want me to share this here? And what he reminded me of was one time when I was on Mara's porch alone. There were no pilgrims either that day or they'd already left. Alone with Meru. And she turned to me and said, Judy, tell me about Mara. She's Mara's niece. She went on the new life with Mara and Baba and has lived her whole life as long as Mara was with us, with her. And in that process, I shared a number of experiences with Baba and Mara. And somehow I also included the experience of which I'm going to share just the part that relates to Elizabeth with you today. And at the end, I told her that I rarely share these experiences. And I've kept them in my heart all these years. And she said, Judy, it's really good that you've kept them and pondered them in your heart till now. But now it's important that you share them with others because it helps them. So on Meru's advice, so I came to Baba the day he dropped his body, and then he made me wait for 17 years to get to Maribot. And I kept tugging on his shirt sleeve saying, Baba, I have to meet Mara. I have to meet Mara. And I know that you said she would live to be 80. And I didn't know if that meant she'd live longer than 80 or pass away at 80, but time was coming close. So in 1986, he finally got me to Maribot. And I'd been there, I don't know, a few days, less than a week. And that morning, I woke up really early, probably, 5 or maybe earlier than that, and went up and felt directed to go up the hill, even though I think I knew it was against the rules to leave that early in the morning, but that's what I felt directed to do. So I started to walk. Of course, there was the old PC in those days, and you walked up the hill. And as I'm sure all of you know, you cross the road, and then you come to the railroad tracks and cross those. And then there's another road that comes by. And so I had just crossed the railroad tracks. And as I came to the road, just before the hill starts going up, Baba appeared to me in human form. And he took my hand, my left hand, and I can still remember the feeling of him holding my hand as he walked me all the way up the hill. And we were both in, we were both in silence. And instead, there was seemingly no one around at all. And as we came towards the samadhi, he didn't take me to the samadhi. He took me around to, as you face it, the left side of the samadhi. And because Mara, fortunately, was still in the body at that time, there were, the close women's graves to Baba's samadhi were not there yet at all. But Baba walked me directly over to Elizabeth's grave. And he looked down at her grave so lovingly, so very, very lovingly. And he said words which I heard, which were, "Elizabeth loves me so much." And the gratitude and love that he exuded, that just exuded all from him, sort of in every direction, for Elizabeth, and the fact of how much she loved him was utterly beautiful to behold and experience. And I ended up spending a great deal of time that morning near Elizabeth's grave, because he took me, and there was a banyan tree that was, sort of medium age, not old at that time. And he leaned me into that tree and said that my experiences that morning went on for a long time. But that's what, because we're remembering Elizabeth today, that is my connection with Elizabeth. I didn't have the great good fortune that so many of you have shared of meeting her in person. But I know directly from Mayor Baba how much she loved him and how much her love for him meant to Baba. Jai Baba.
Oh, Judy, I've known you a long time and I've never heard this story. I'm so glad you're sharing it. No words, my.
It seems Baba wanted whoever's hearing it now or will hear it in the future, assuming that Meru is right, which I do, it will help people. So his love is ever with all of us.
Baba. Elaine, how about you?
Jay Baba, can you hear me now? That was so wonderful, Judy. Thank you. Yes. Sometimes Baba gives us those little gems. And of course, that was a pretty big gem. That's wonderful. I have a few of those too. However, the story, following that story, this story is going to seem kind of not silly, but very lightweight compared to that. This goes back to the time when Margaret had retired from New York. She had left and was living in Happy House. And I was there with the family and all the children, of course, my 3 boys. And Alexander, my youngest, was a toddler. He was just beginning to take steps, but he was very tentative about it. And we were visiting. I wanted to go and visit Margaret while she was there. It's odd because living very near New York and in New York for many of those years, excuse me, I never wanted to bother Margaret to go into her apartment, especially with the kids, and I perhaps should have, because they missed a chance to be with her. But anyway, I took the opportunity while we were there to go and visit Margaret, and Elizabeth was there. And we were just having a lovely time, a very quiet conversation. And the children were the older children were keeping themselves busy. But Alexander was sort of in my lap because he was so small, so young. But he was a very active toddler like they are. And I was sitting on one end of the couch that was in that room. And Elizabeth was sitting on the other end of that same couch. And Margaret was sitting in a chair in sort of a triangle. And Alexander was fidgeting. And so I allowed him to stand up at the back of the couch. And he was holding on and kind of walking around on the couch, stepping in and out of the cushions and being a little bit of a bother. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, Alexander just walks over on this squishy cushion couch, and he goes right up to Elizabeth and pulls her glasses off her face. I don't know why who knows what a toddler is thinking like that. But I was just so horrified and I'm embarrassed. And I made a lunge at Alexander and trying to get the glasses out of his hand, but Elizabeth had the most amazing non-response and response. Of course, I always knew she had such wonderful poise. I mean, she was poise to me. But that really cemented it with me. The utter calm of her reaction was so exquisite. She just reached out to Alexander, and I think he actually, as I remember, it was a very gentle giving back. Alex put the glasses in her hand. And she just said, "Oh, that's all right." And she just reached out, and here's this 10-month-old, 11-month-old kid, and he just let go of the glasses and she took them back, and she was just there was just not even a ripple in the water with her. And I completely calmed down, and of course, I'm still embarrassed to think about it, that I allowed my son to do that, but it happened so fast, but it's so cemented in my mind that it was that same poise with which she ran the center whenever anything would happen she always just dealt with it just like more like a gentle stream or a very smooth river. She never, there was, anyway, it was, she had that quality about her. And that was for me a great lesson in dealing with emergencies or anything sudden like that, or something that's not going the way you think it should go, is to remember what Baba said about poise. And the exact words I can't remember, but it was the greatest. I think Baba said something like, it's a great, great gift to have poise, that it's more important than many other things. So anyway, Elizabeth personified that for me. And of course, it was because of her great love and understanding of everything, everybody else, you know, all the vibes that people have. That's what she was aware of them. And yet she never reacted in any way other than positive. And it was just, for me, it was just, it meant so much as a young mother. Anyway, I've never forgotten that. And I have great, huge respect for Elizabeth to this day. And that was my little story.
Thank you. Very
Hey, Baba.
heart touching. That was a lovely story, Elaine.
Yeah, it was funny, and yet it was, you know, because I got upset, it was sad, it was awful, and then it was also wonderful because of Elizabeth. So yeah. And that little boy, that little infant, is now 43 years old. Oh my God, what happened? What happened? Hey, Baba. Thank you.
Hey, Baba. Will has just joined us. I think he has something to share. Hi, Will.
Hi, Betty. Here I am. You know what brought me to Mayor Baba? I reflected fairly early on in my following him was his humor. His humor within me was what caused me to become his follower. And how that happened, or that it happened anyway, it did happen. So he's still making me laugh. That's Mayor Baba. So Elizabeth comes in. She also has joined the humor because I found her humorous. I was her one of her caretakers in the early 70s, and poise she had, certain gravity about her, seriousness, but her humor was just so funny. And she had what I'd call a New England humor. Being a Californian, I've just noticed English people are, we call it dry, don't we? And I think she's from Chicago. And anyway, she had, I'd call it dry humor. And I remember one day I was reaching for the phone at the caretaker's cabin. It's not too far from the lagoon cabin. If the phone rang, whoever's around it goes and answers it. And Elizabeth was at the other end, and it had to do with fetching something for her or doing something on the center, because she was calling from home at Del Ruba. And it was about 10:30 in the morning, sunny. And so first of all, she told me what the need was, and then somehow she brought some joke out of it. And we just forgot exactly what the work was because we went right into laughter and happy and laughing and laughing. And she could pull that out of work. And that was a work conversation. You got the humor, we got the laughter going, and then pause. With her, there was a pause, or maybe there was a pause in me, and shh, I made it sound like Zoom. But we went right back to the work conversation following the laughter and humor. Very nice. She's a bit like a conductor in the conversation. So I knew her, and I was told by other people that she was fond of me. And I could have gotten that in different activities. I felt comfortable with her, and yet she was that one who was responsible uh, as my lead, we could say my boss, but on another time, I'll share how she let me know uh, who our boss was. Guess who our boss was? Everybody answer. Are you answering inside? There you go, Baba. So she had that natural gift to let me know she knew, and Baba knew that he was our boss, and then we were all family. That's actually how she gave me that good uh, with words and intuitively that we were family. We were following out his whatever was needed for the day. All right, that was my share.
Thank you.
Happy and love to everybody that I see or don't see.
Oh, I remember that after one of the hurricanes, Will went and talked to all the trees that had fallen down and the ones that were sort of still alive. And I'm sure Elizabeth, knowing her love for nature, might have heard about that and was very appreciative because Will went into the center after Hurricane Hugo, I guess, I don't think it was, some one of those hurricanes, and told all the trees that were upset and cracked, and some of them were dead, but some could still listen. And Will was telling them, carry on. You know, Elizabeth would have been happy about that.
She's so funny. That's the first time I've heard of me doing that.
You told me.
Oh, I told you. Kathy's memory is better than mine. Oh my gosh, that's good, isn't it?
But you know, you've heard the story about the tree, you know, Cedar Nook had a tree that actually Elizabeth said, don't cut the tree down. And there's a little place, you know, where in the roof where she made them cut the roof out so you would leave the cedar tree there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she did tell me that for some reason she let me know that the cedar tree amongst the tree family of many trees is an old soul or an older soul than some tree species. That's one little nibbit that I got when I was there. Kitty would have us go out into the forest and she'd just choose a big, giant, beautiful tree that she'd find in the forest and she'd have us nip and clean and kind of just out of her good imagination make that tree more visible for people when we would walk by, like on that road between the center and Baba's house. She found a big oak tree. And then on the side from Elizabeth, she was our co-boss, I guess. We'd go and do whatever she'd like.
Good. Perfect. Yay.
That's a great story, Will.
Oh boy.
I have another on the subject of wood, and actually, this story is Jim Wilson's story. Jim, my good friend Wilson, the Wilsons out here, lived. They were Myrtle Beach people for quite a while, and I think a lot of you probably know them. Jim and Ray, son-in-law of the Hernandez, Ray, is it Apple? Anyway, they were doing work on the barn for Elizabeth, and she had specified rose pine. She wanted rose pine for whatever they were working on. Was it maybe ceiling or something? And Jim said that they looked, that's my bird clock in the background here. Jim had she had specified rose pine. Jim said they called all over the place and could not find it, could not source it. So they made a decision just to go ahead and get, I think it was white pine. And when Elizabeth came out to inspect, they hadn't started, I don't think, but they had a pile of lumber there. And Elizabeth came out to check it all out, and she noticed it right away. She said, you know, that I had wanted you to get rose pine, and they said, Elizabeth, we looked all over and couldn't locate it, couldn't find it. And so we ordered this, and she said to them, you didn't have the authority to make that decision. And she said, I'll make a phone call or two. And she got the roast pie and got, and so that's how that happened. So that was Jim's story to me. So, wow, it's been a lovely time, folks. I'm debating. I have about, I don't know. Oh, Connie says it was the extension of the meeting place. Oh, thank you, Connie. Not the barn. Okay, great. Okay. I have a story that'll maybe take 5 minutes. So I'll, and then I think we're winding down. This is the Kippy story. This is in Charles's book. Mayor Baba's love of dogs. When I was a child, Elizabeth told me a story about Kippy, her beloved female Boston Terrier, who traveled to India with her in the 1930s. In the early days, she recounted, Baba called them to live in the Nasik ashram. Someone told Elizabeth that she would have to leave Kippy behind because the ashram was no place for dogs. Heartbroken, Elizabeth did as she was told and left Kippy in someone else's care. When she and the other disciples arrived at the ashram, Baba was there to greet them. After an embrace, Baba looked at Elizabeth and then cradled his arms as though he were holding a baby and gestured, "Where's the baby?" Taken aback, Elizabeth replied, "I left Kippy behind, Baba, because I thought dogs were not allowed here." Baba smiled and gestured, "Send for Kippy immediately." And from that time on, Kippy became a treasured member of the ashram. Indeed, the queen of the dogs and animals of the ashram, showered with love and attention from Baba and all the women disciples. In telling me the story of Kippy, one of the rare occasions she spoke to me about the early days, Elizabeth was drawing me ever closer to Baba. She knew how it would touch my child's heart to know that Baba shared my love of dogs. Soon after, Baba returned to India. After the 1958 Sahabas at Meher Center, Elizabeth got me my own dog, a collie I named Buff. She took great joy in teaching me how to care for Buff. Don't complain if she wants to stop a great deal during walks, she told me early on. After all, it is her walk. Baba himself took a great interest in Buff, who became my closest friend. Although correspondence to India was limited because of Baba's strict seclusion, messages between Elizabeth and Mani always included references to Buff and to Wendy's cat Puff. When Baba sent his love to Elizabeth, Kitty, and our family, he always included Buff and Puff. When Buff died from a sudden illness, one of the most devastating days of my life, Baba cabled me the following message. Your love for me will help Buff, who is also mine. Be in my love for you resigned and happy. Meher Baba. So on that note, I think we'll say Avatar Meher Baba. Oops, wait, Meher Prasad, Meher Prasad. You have something to add.
Yes, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because I'm driving, so I'm not sure if you can. Will's point about humor reminded me of this story. It happened during the Blue Bus tours near Goa. It was, I think, April, and it was hot. And in Goa, there is a place called Panjim. And one day, Elizabeth asked Baba, the ice cream here is really popular. Should we get some? And Baba said, yes, let's get ice cream. And she goes off and to get the ice cream. And in the meantime, Baba asks Dr. Neelu, if you get cold with the ice cream, what's the remedy? And he says, garlic is good for the throat, the sore throat and so on. So Baba orders a whole bunch of garlic pickle to be made. And that garlic pickle is ready. And apparently Elizabeth did not like garlic. So she comes back with this big ice cream for everyone. And she didn't know what was going on. So Baba, in the meantime, she didn't know what was going on in the meantime. So once she gets the ice cream, Baba tells everyone, okay, you can all have the ice cream, but with every scoop of ice cream you eat, you also eat the same scoop of garlic pickle. Talking about the sense of humor, that's pretty. Imagine eating your favorite food with your least favorite food. Yeah. That was so funny.
Talk about balance.
Yeah. People, after that, the Mandali and everyone that was with Baba thought it would have been better not to have the ice cream than have this. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, thank you. Rosalie.
Betty, yeah. I looked up this poem that Phyllis Frederick, who we're doing her time next Saturday, but she wrote about Elizabeth. It's a short, one of her short poems for Elizabeth. Go carefully, go slow into the new climate, music frozen, so ice white yet loving. All around you, the movement of invisible wings. No, this isn't Antarctica. It is only the coolness of eternal summer.
Oh, can you read it again, Rosalie? One
Yeah.
more?
I think it, it gets that poise and that coolness that she had that was extraordinary. For Elizabeth, go carefully, go slow into the new climate. Music frozen, so ice white yet loving. All around you, the movement of invisible wings. No, this isn't Antarctica. It is only the coolness of eternal summer. And of course, she was a summer baby. Very, very Leo. Yeah. The royalty, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Catherine, your singing was wonderful. We're gonna have to Jim, poor Jim, we have to go make him feel better. So Jai Baba.
Thank
Jai
you.
Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Avatar Meher Baba.
Ki Jai.
Thank you, Betty.
Avatar Meher Baba. Ki Jai.
Avatar Meher
Baba Ki
Jai.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Betty.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Great job. Thank you, Kathy.
Good job.
Thank you, BJ.
Wow.
Jai Baba.
Much, Kathy. Dana, where maybe she's gone. Okay. If I close, I'll end it all. So I'm waiting for
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Betty. Jai
Jay
Baba.
Baba. That was wonderful, BJ, for your story.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Foreign
Thank
guest,
you.
huh?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, I don't want to miss Elizabeth.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love her. Oh,
That was a
yeah.
great poem, Rosalie, you found. Wow, that was wonderful.
Oh, what's that?
Your poem that you found was
Oh,
wonderful.
yeah. No, I remembered it because it's felt so, I love Phyllis's book,
Mhm. Yes, I do too.
Light on Running Water. Yeah. And I remembered it was in here. So, yeah.
Fabulous. Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll see you next
That was very special, Betty. It's like, I have
Baba.
to tell you something funny. When Phyllis passed away, I was in charge of doing a meeting for her, to remember her
Wow.
shortly after. And I got so nervous. You want to do a good job? I can feel your nervousness, and I thought,
It never
now
goes away.
Phyllis, Baba had given her a worry operation. And when I remembered that, I thought, oh, Baba, this is so funny. I'm just worrying myself to death. And Phyllis is probably laughing, trying to be compassionate, because, I mean, she's a big time Mandali, Elizabeth. So I imagine it made you nervous.
Oh, very, very.
You want to do it honor, but Baba takes over. And that's the first time I read and hear. It's so beautiful. There's more to it.
Oh, I'm so glad you found that to read.
Yeah, because it seemed perfect because,
perfect.
Jim couldn't get on and
Crazy.
I don't know, it almost wasn't time for the sharings.
Yeah.
And this was Elizabeth. It wasn't,
Yeah, perfect.
he was sharing meeting Baba.
Yeah, that was fabulous. Yeah.
It's you. Yeah. So it was timely that I had it.
Totally, Baba. Yeah.
Yeah, totally, Baba. Yeah. And then Will coming in, it's like so funny. Yeah. Yeah, and it's so beautiful because you see the different facets of the jewel with the different sharings because
So true.
it's so beautiful. And I thought no one mentioned that, but hadn't she been? I don't know if Baba let her know, but she must have been a queen.
I've never
I've heard that. Oh yeah, I don't doubt it because she had the carriage, unruffled. Oh yeah, one of the Elizabeths or something. Jeff would know. People tread lightly when it comes to Elizabeth, but my relationship with her was quite personal in a way. I mean, she actually sent me back to California, and she told me, just between you and me, I don't know if anyone was on it. She says to stop mothering this person and to go back to California. She was mentoring him. Wow. He's still working on the center.
Wow.
So, and I left the very day that I was going to continue living with him. Boom, they sent me out of town. Speaker Baba did not want it.
Wow.
Oh, I was like, they bought me a ticket and I was gone.
Wow.
And it was very funny because the person said, why do you listen to her? Why? I says, no, I says, you're being mentored. You listen to her all the time. You really look up to her. I says, don't blame me. I says, just finish up and come to California. Yeah. But at any rate, Elizabeth, I'm sure she didn't interfere very often. She felt she could with me, but that's interfering, it's like, but she had a serious plan in mind. So, And it was perfect because, like I say, I wanted a democratic that Phyllis, in fact, I have a state, she did a study of democracy in the Baba group.
Oh, wow.
I'll find it.
That'd be great. That'd be a great topic for,
Oh
discussion.
yeah,
Like
oh
with
yeah,
Jeff-
because
with Jeff on
you know,
yeah.
it's very interesting. Pluto going through Capricorn, it won't leave till January 22nd of 2024, just when we have a change of precedence. It's so interesting. Yeah, that very day. And I thought, every governing body is being purged. So the center is not exempt. You know, it's a governing body, so, it's, I think of that, Baba, with Elizabeth, she had carte blanche. It needed to be that way. She had Baba totally trusted her judgment.
Yeah. Well.
And he'd always say, refer to Elizabeth. I mean, he didn't do that to everybody. No. And not everyone was Dilruba. Anyway, you did a good job.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm sure all parties were pleased. Yeah. I mean, for you bring such